Hi, Caleb. Thank you for being here with us today.
Having me.
This is our first startup stories that is fully on video. I think we've had video clips here and there, and we're always on, as you know, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple. But this is our first time sitting down and doing a full face-to-face interview, which I know is something you preferred and something I'm super excited about. I think it's more genuine and people could really, really feel the conversation. And for anyone who doesn't know, Caleb is the founder of Perfect Farewells, which he's going to tell you about. And then also, he is in California right now, actually. We're here recording on Wall Street. He's up at the crack of dawn across the country. So, yeah, we appreciate you for getting up at like 4 in the morning to talk to us. And we're really stoked to have you here with us today. So I think we're just going to start off. We just start off as natural as possible. This is Startup Stories, about what your story is. You could start as early back as you find necessary, whether it's like you realized you had an entrepreneurial spirit when you were a kid, how you were in school, or if you want to just flat out start with Perfect Farewells and how it came to be. Where do you see like the beginning of this path really starting?
Cool. Yeah. So I'll start with what Perfect Farewells is, and then I'll tell you a little bit of my background, and I guess work the story up.
Yeah, awesome.
Perfect Farewells is, as far as I know, the first globally capable, totally custom cremation ash scattering service. So I can go anywhere in the world. I want to do pretty much. I want to be able to fulfill any request anyone might have to scatter their ashes. Any requests to their families, and any scattering I do, we video it. I have a camera crew that come with me. We video the entire thing, make a personal documentary about that person. We keep it light, we keep it positive, and really what I want to do is transform kind of a sad, negative American tradition, or how we see funerals and how we see these services into something more positive, more celebrating the person.
Yeah.
And really doing what they essentially would have wanted, if they were still alive, and just doing things that they enjoy doing. And we can do everything from skydiving to mountaineering. I'll go on a 3-day hike. If you want to go sailing, I'll sail.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
If you want to go a 9-second on a quarter mile on a drag strip, I'll drop you out the back. I mean, we really want to do anything, anyone, truly embodies the person.
Yeah. That's awesome, because you guys are like experiencing your own adventures through it too, right? You're like,
yeah, I was about to say, you kind of get your own little vacation.
You get this you're like, it's every person that you are fulfilling the wishes of, they're bringing you on like your own new adventure. Like you're hiking somewhere you may not have hiked. You're like, okay, I don't know, I've never sailed, but now I'm going to sail, whatever it might be. It's like an experience for you guys too. It's been
a huge experience, and it makes it more personal. I feel like I have a more connection with the person I'm scattering. I mean,
yeah.
This brought me, and it's made me skydive, which is terrifying.
I want to so much.
The whole time I'm doing it, I'm thinking, this person loved this, and I'm shaking in my boots.
Yeah, right. Has anyone ever requested anything that was like nearly impossible to do?
I would say so far the skydiving is definitely the scariest thing I did, and you get used to that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But originally, I mean, that was the pretty big step, is getting that certification and working towards that, and I'm still progressing in that. So
yeah, awesome.
Other than that, it's brought me really cool places. I went deep sea fishing before.
Wow.
That was interesting. That's actually my favorite
awesome.
Scattering I've done so far.
Wow.
So, and also Perfect Farewells has a second service, and it's art mixed cremation.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take paintings, molds, and really anything. I mean, if a customer contacted me, the idea behind my business and what I want to provide for my customers is to never say no.
Yeah.
If it's legal.
If it's legal.
Yeah, that's just what I was saying.
That's awesome.
If it's legal, then I want to be able to provide it. And I think from what I've seen, a lot of people, what they struggle with a couple things. They don't know what to do with ashes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to do it. And if they do it, they do it illegally, or they don't do the proper paperwork. So it creates a shadow of that experience, and this is an experience I think that shouldn't have a shadow around it. I think you shouldn't have to look over your shoulder to scatter your father's ashes. I think you should be proud, stand up tall, be able to video it and share that with your family, and create something you're proud of, and that's essentially what I want to do.
Do you find that the personal, hands-on, family-involved experience that you're doing brings them have you found that it brings them more closure and brings more happiness to it? Have you seen the impact of what you've been doing?
Absolutely, from day one. So I guess this kind of segues us into the backstory of Perfect Farewells.
Yeah.
So was an entrepreneur. He worked factory workers. I'm from the Midwest. He worked several factories at once. Was never home. Really busted his butt to provide for me and my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being probably 14, and he came home and he said, I'm tired of teaching you guys how to be a worker. I want to teach you guys how to be a boss. We're going to start our own business. And we were all excited, and we said sure. And so we started. At 14, I started driving his truck around the industrial park where I'm from with a mower on the back, and we started cutting grass. During the winter months, we would snowplow. Pretty normal, Midwest, starter business stuff. And then we had kind of transitioned into cleaning and also property maintenance. And then during 2008, we got into basically cleaning out homes that had been foreclosed on. And that really pushed us more into the cleaning sector. So my dad started carpet cleaning, janitorial services for factories, and the whole time, I worked with him from a pretty young age. He really taught me how to work hard and instilled a really hard work ethic into me. Mm-hmm. He fired a couple of my brothers. He's a very realistic man. So he.
That's awesome.
I was ever a kid working. He taught me a lot, as a father, but he also taught me a lot as essentially my first boss.
Yeah. Awesome.
I had the exact same experience when I was 14, 15 years old. My dad, he wanted me to be partners. He was shifting his business, and he's like, I wanted to work in a hardware store at the time. He's like, well, listen, I want to partner. He's like, why don't you partner with me in this? So he was an entrepreneur his whole life. I was always doing my own businesses. But then at 14, 15 years old, I had that one. And I had it all the way up until my law firm. So it lasted a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a similar experience.
It definitely, than anybody else. It completely changed my whole mindset as a kid.
You don't grow up normal in a sense. You're just you're constantly thinking like a business person and everything like that. Yeah. But it's funny, because your he's the hardest boss you ever have in your life, the hardest partner you ever have in your life.
Yeah.
And they're more harder than anybody else. So
it sets you up, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember he said something to me, and he's been saying this my whole life, but I would say it's probably what has stuck the most. He would tell me, and this started even back when we were mowing. Day one of the business, just mow all the grass. And that it's not necessarily a legal, or it's not necessarily a literal term. But he's always taught me not to cut corners.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Mow every piece of grass. Yeah. And even if I were a toilet scrubber, I would be the best toilet scrubber.
That's awesome.
That's what I say. Remember your job is just try to be the best at your job. That's what I always do. I don't care what you do. If you scrub dishes or something, make sure you're the best dish scrubber out there. Don't half-ass a job because somebody wants to do your job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that kind of transition. So I worked with him when I turned 18. I joined the Navy, and probably halfway through my naval career, I had a pretty bad injury to my ankle, and I was in a wheelchair, and that completely changed my life.
Yeah.
The perspective of being limited or disabled, and I'm a pretty healthy, athletic individual, and then being stuck in a chair looking at white walls in a hospital flipped my world. And at the same time, a really close someone I loved died, and they had a final request, and essentially due to a lot of things, it wasn't fulfilled. And at the time, I was in a wheelchair, and I just felt like I could have done this thing for this person, but I physically couldn't. I was stuck in this chair, and it was a pretty dark, like heavy time. And I thought, I had a lot of time because I was sitting around in a wheelchair in a hospital, and I thought, I could provide a service that basically gave anyone who wanted their final request, I could fulfill that for them. I could find a way, logistically, legally, physically, whatever is stopping their family from being able to perform this, I could do it for them as a service. But I didn't necessarily think of it as a business at that point. I just thought it was something that people might need, and that my buddy who was in the Navy when I got better, and he pretty much, we were at breakfast, and he almost broke down, and he told me that he had felt guilty for years because he had his brother's ashes in his drawer at home, like in his desk drawer, and he didn't know quite what to do with them, but he wanted to do something, and so him and I went rock climbing. I was stationed in Hawaii at the time, so we went rock climbing in Makapu and scattered his brother. And I remember looking over at my friend and seeing his face and just knowing that I helped him with something, and we didn't say anything, and it was just silent, but it was just peaceful. It was just absolutely tranquil.
Yeah.
And on the way down, it was quiet. We didn't say anything, and then about halfway down the hike on the way back, he looked over to me, and I'll never forget it. And he just said, "Thank you." And that, honestly, it brought me to tears.
Yeah.
He was crying. We hiked the rest of the way down, and it was, so from then on, I knew,
So it was like
and that answers your question, kind of, that I knew that it helped someone, and it more so than anything else I've ever done, I think, that truly helped him.
Yeah.
So was that like your moment you realized that like this is something that you wanted to do? Like that was the moment for you?
Like that was like that gave you purpose, and you were like, yeah, I have to do this.
So yes and no. So I not as a business standpoint yet, and this was years ago,
Yeah.
but it gave me confirmation that people do need this, and it can help them. And I took that idea, and I called my mom later, and I told her, I'm thinking about starting this business, and she said, that's unique. And,
Yeah, that's different.
It's certainly different, yeah.
and so I started to put together basically a business plan, and she is actually the one that named it Perfect Farewells. I was trying to think of a name,
Awesome.
and I kept on calling her, and then one day she just kind of whispered, she was like, yeah, it's like the perfect farewell. And I was like,
Like,
perfect farewell. That's it. Yeah, I was like, cool. So I pretty much had the business plan and the name and the idea. This was years ago, but I had a deployment coming up in the Navy, and it basically put on everything I had in my life on hold, and I went on deployment. And deployment kind of shifted my views towards a lot of things. I wanted to travel when I got out of the Navy. I was getting out of the Navy right after the deployment. And so when I got out of the Navy, I traveled. I went to Southeast Asia. I lived there for 6 months. I bought land in Tennessee. I started building a log cabin there. That's been a 3-year project that I should be finishing up this year. And so basically I didn't get around to any of the business stuff. I just have been doing all these other things in life. And this last Christmas, I was in Hawaii visiting my friends from the Navy. And I was on the phone with my dad, and I was telling him about how I wanted to buy a sailboat and circumnavigate South America. And all my ideas are crazy.
No, I love it. I'm like not even reacting. I'm like, yes, this makes sense. Like,
Tell me more.
yeah, like I'm passionate. I'm the same way. I kind of just go to whatever calls to me. So I'm not even interrupting. I'm like, yes, okay, you're getting a sailboat, you're traveling. Of course, continue.
Yes.
So, and my dad kind of went sober on the phone, and he said, do you think you'll regret it? And I was like, regret what? And he's like, if you do these things, if you do more of these things, I know you really, have been living on the road and you travel a lot and you do all these things you want to do, will you regret not doing business? And I've had several ideas. I have a whole notebook actually that is just filled. Every day I probably write in it a new business idea. I put 3 of them yesterday in there.
That's awesome.
And a lot of them are ridiculous, but some of them are good. And I told him no, and then I got off the phone, and then I just sat on it. And I sat on it, and I sat on it, and I thought, man, he's right, but I won't. So basically after 2 days of thinking about it, I said, let's scrap the sailboat. I could buy a sailboat at any point in my life. Let me do something, because if I don't do it, someone else will. And if they do it, maybe they won't do it exactly how I imagined it. And now.
Or like with not as much heart. Like somebody might have this idea, but not have like the story or not have the passion behind it. And that's like the worst feeling, I think.
I can't imagine not seeing it how like I want it.
Yeah.
I help people like how I imagine it, how it's positive and not dark, not negative, and so basically I just hopped online, bought a domain, and started working on the website. I had a website up in about 2 weeks, and then filed for an LLC, did all the paperwork all myself. I've been in college for business, so I learned a lot of the stuff in my classes. My teachers helped me a lot. All of my class projects I had molded around perfect farewells before it was actually a legal business, so I'd actually done a lot of the paperwork already, and so I just actually filed it, and I didn't tell anyone in my family until it was completely in stone. I had a business account at my bank, everything. Then my dad came and visited me, and he's like, "What adventure are you getting into next?" And I was like, "I think you'll really like this one." And I handed it in the folder with all my paperwork in it, and yeah, that was a pretty big deal. So
that's awesome.
So that's kind of how.
In like 2 minutes, yeah. I'm just going to announce the last minute.
Yeah, he has to step out for a few, and then
a minute,
and then he'll be back. So what's interesting to me, and like I don't even know where to start because I could talk about it all day, but it's technically you're entering a dark industry, right? Even though people like you and people like me, like I've always been passionate about it, always see like the lighter side of it, and that it doesn't have to be dreary, and you're essentially adding color to like a very dark, what people see as a dark industry with your art, with these like documentary end of life celebration documentaries you're making. So do you face that stigma? Like when you tell people what you do you find that people are generally negative? Has it been hard? Because at the end of the day, you are in the death industry, right? Even though it's a completely creative, artistic, beautiful, positive industry, a content creation even, like there are a million ways you could label it yourself, but at the end of the day, you're providing a service in death care. So like how has that reaction been when you've kind of told people? Like when you tell friends and you tell them what you do, or you're meeting with a client or something.
Wait, I have a question just to take on to that. Are you involved in the cremation process or just the spreading process?
Just the spreading process. I don't do any cremation or work with any funeral home or anything.
Okay.
So like if you are plugging yourself in a classroom at an event, whatever it might be, do you find that at first people are a little... Is there like a moment where you see them kind of react? How's that been?
What I find, what I require is more than 2 seconds. If I'm like the elevator interview for me is the hardest because it does have a negative stigma that's very traditional, and I really one of the biggest points I make, or I try to make, is that I want to separate myself from that.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to be traditionally what we think it is. I want to be celebratory. I want to be positive. So it does take some time to explain like the real idea behind perfect farewells.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as soon as I get that across to everyone I've ever talked to, I've never had a single person tell me anything negative, never had any negative remarks. Everyone's like, wow, that's beautiful or unique or different. Different's probably the farthest south I've ever been told, but I've never had anyone, it's typically all, just positive, like, wow, that's new. And I'm like, thanks.
No, that's awesome. I think, because there's this whole death positive movement happening, right? And I'm a big believer in it. Like, I personally think, again, could go on all day, but like we as, and I think you learn a lot from traveling. So I've traveled a lot as well, and I've been to Turkey, and I've been to other countries where there's no such thing as a funeral home. Like, the funeral home is their home, and people get together as a community, and they're not selling these like $10,000 metal caskets to go in the ground. They're like burying their family directly into earth and having these green burials, and it's all celebration, and it's hands-on, and people get that closure. And it's something that I think is part of our culture, and it wasn't even part of our culture until the Civil War, which is like crazy how recent in our history it is. But I think we have this new generation of people who are just begging for more, and they think, this doesn't have to be dark. This can be beautiful. And I think as we go through our own losses, we like learn in our own ways. I think every time somebody goes through a loss, they learn in their own way, like, oh, there has to be something more than this. Like, this feels very distant. This feels very saturated. This isn't how it's supposed to be. It's like human nature. It's kind of crazy that it's human nature that we just feel it. We don't know what it is, but we just feel like this traditional way is really how it shouldn't be. But a lot of people don't question it for long. They maybe question it at a funeral, they're uncomfortable, but they don't go think about it after. People don't want to think about death, obviously. It's a scary thing to think about. Cremation, it's a scary thing to think about. So I'm very grateful and happy that there are people like you in the world who are like, well, why aren't we talking about this? That's part of what makes it a stigma. That's part of what makes it scary. When the time comes, like, you're going to want it to be positive, and you're going to want it to be beautiful. So like, let's offer these things now. Like, let's make changes now. And I think it's an extremely, extremely positive to have people in this death positive movement, which I don't even know if you realize you're a part of, but you really are, like a pioneer in this kind of movement, which I find very inspiring.
I appreciate it. I think anything that has so many euphemisms needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
If we have so many words to make something easier,
yeah.
then instead of having so many words, let's talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it, actually.
Society, and I think you're right. I do think that the traditional way hasn't been questioned, and now it is becoming questioned or is changing. I've seen basically the positive movement of wearing jerseys to the funeral instead of black tie, or wearing people going out and drinking and having a party, and that person, or however that family deals with that loss. But I'm seeing these positive celebrations become more popular, and I personally do think that's healthy. And I think it goes against maybe the traditional American burial situation. And I'm glad you brought it up, because of newer than what I think most people think phenomenon that we think is traditional, that just hasn't been around for more than 150 years, I think, probably at most, is what we're doing today. And I do think it is important, especially how important it is. This isn't a small event. I would compare someone's death as one of the biggest things in their life. That's so I think that we should put a lot of thought and an effort into like how we make this personal, how we make this theirs.
Yeah. And it's amazing for them, but it's also amazing for the family. Like, I've read a couple good books. Like Confessions of a Funeral Director is a good one, and then another one is, oh my God, it's the one I recommended to you the other day. Now I forget. You got it! Oh, I'm so happy. I could literally cry. That book is so good. But reading these books, like someone like Caitlin Dowdy, who's the author of that book, like she traveled the world. It's not something you can really just sit there and figure out. It's something that like culture teaches you, travel teaches you, reading teaches you. When you learn more about it, you realize that there's a reason, like you said, we're using euphemisms for it, and there's a reason we feel a certain way about it, like something in our stomach that we can't identify, and it's because we don't talk about it. And like that book taught me a lot, and you just read about these people who say like, you know, they educate you on how recent in our history it is, and what basically happened was like we started embalming like soldiers so that they could come home from the war and see their families, and Abe Lincoln was embalmed, and the people saw that and said, I want that too. And then they figured out how to make money off of it. They were like, well, we can make a home that looks like your home. And it just became more and more and more distant. And nobody really questioned it, or I don't think realized how rapidly it was becoming distant. And now you read things like that book and you see what people are doing around the world, and you realize like, oh, maybe this did go a little bit out of control. And maybe people are like craving for it to be back. Like you said, it's the biggest day. How much do people plan their wedding or their sweet 16? Like, how much do people sit there and say every detail has to be right, but then they don't want to talk about their end of life plan because they're like, well, that's scary, and I kind of don't want to even think about that ever happening. This is fun, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about my wedding. This is much more fun. So I think you putting a positive light on it though, and saying like, no, like, what do you picture and how can we make it beautiful and fun? I think that makes it easier for people to accept. Like, treat it like you were planning a party. It does make it easier and more personal and more fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's crazy because, like, it's like you said, like, yeah, it's to give this person what they want. But even in, like, reading these books and stuff, you find out that, like, it's even more healthy for the family, 100%. They feel important. They feel like they have a role that they're fulfilling. They feel hands-on, and it just puts like family and love back into it, and it becomes less of a business. It becomes more like a party. So I think it's better for everyone to get that closure.
And I think from what I've heard from customers, I think a lot of people have guilt or a negative feeling about having an urn full of ashes. And most of my customers, the death hasn't been recent. They've had an urn for 2 or 3 years on a shelf in a closet in a drawer, and they feel like, you know, they're not doing anything with that person, and then they remember that person, and they remember who they were and how they lived, and they don't feel like they're living up to that expectation. And that really, to me, that's just, it's a huge deal to be able to transition and give that relief to a customer, you know, that person that they loved finally got, you know, a really peaceful or very exciting or very personal scattering or mixed, you know, art or you know, whatever it is. That relieves a lot of stress from the family, and I've seen it almost every single time. Just that weight being lifted off their shoulders, that final silence, and then that thank you, and that's why I do this.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, how has it been like balancing it with school? How often are you doing this? How often, obviously, like, we were planning this podcast, you're like, yeah, we'll hop on, and then I gotta go give this speech, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have things to do that are important. Like, how has that balance been for you?
It's been wild. So I'm full-time school. So I go to Mesa College in San Diego. I run this business, and I also work part-time as a mechanic.
Nice.
So
quite a schedule you got there.
Yeah, it is. It's been packed.
And you're building your cabin. You were talking to me about that.
What is it?
You're building your cabin
Oh,
when you get a chance.
yeah, building a cabin. Yeah, I'm planning a South America trip. But still, it'll be
Nice.
shorter. I'm not going to circumnavigate it, but I do want to go down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it definitely is a huge balancing act. I feel like I have 100 balls in my hand that I don't know quite how to juggle, but so
Yeah.
far I've been able to handle it. I think triaging everything is really how I do it. So being a mechanic's easy. I just have to show up on time. My boss is awesome.
That's awesome.
He really actually helps me a lot with the business. His logo, or the guy that prints out his logos and stuff, he got me in contact with him. So he's been making me hats of like different like hats, and I mean it really, my boss like paid for it, and, like really hooked me up.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, so he's a close friend of mine, so I don't have to worry about that so much. School and perfect farewells is really the battle.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
So-
Battling for your attention and your time, 100%.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, like, do you get overwhelmed? How do you deal with staying motivated and kind of on track for both? Like making sure the grades are good, but you're also getting and serving your clients and growing perfect farewells. How do you deal with that?
So kind of what I do, a lot of courses, and I basically took all these business classes and put them all into the business. So they work hand in hand. This semester is the exact opposite. I have anthropology, interpersonal communications, which is easy, Spanish, and a Chicano art class. None of those relate to business unless you try. And then when you really think about it, when you really sit down, you can learn something from each of these classes if you want and apply them to the business. My Chicano art class has given me a great gateway into the art community. That's really where I'm kind of pushing for perfect farewells right now, is to do these art pieces, to hire artists. I just hired an artist, Jeremy. We can talk about him in a little bit.
Yeah, you told me about him. It's awesome.
Yeah, so I do try to incorporate everything from school, and I try to learn from that and apply it to the business. And I think that's really where, because I'm super motivated about working on the business. I come home every day from school and I'm excited to work on my website. I'm excited to send emails. And not even like giddy excited, but just truly like happy to be doing this, to be building something of my own. It's something I've wanted since I was a kid, since I saw my dad do it. So taking everything I learned from school, using those resources for my business is kind of how I balance it. And that gives me more motivation to go to school. So I try to use that positive motivation for my business towards school. And a lot of times I'll do a homework assignment. I work on the website for an hour. Do another homework assignment, work on the website for an hour. I combine them if I can, which I did in a lot of my business classes. So
that's awesome.
That's how I do that. But it definitely does take sacrifice. I don't sleep as much.
Yeah.
What's sleep, right?
Yeah.
That is.
That's a genius way to look at it, though. Like it's not something you could avoid. So you take what's in front of you, and it's all about mindset. It's like, how do I deal with this? Okay, like scheduling your business classes and doing your projects on your business is genius, because it's the paperwork you need to. It's the paperwork you need to file anyway, and then once you run out of those courses and you say, okay, I can't avoid it any longer, I have to take X, Y, and Z, looking at everything as a lesson and saying, well, how can I apply this, is really a fantastic way to look at it. And it gives you that motivation because you care about your business. So when you're learning, you find a way to care about that too. And then, passion fuels purpose and all of that. So I think that's great advice for any entrepreneurs watching who are in school and stuff, because we do meet a lot of people who are starting their dream, but they're they have pressure to finish school or whatever their life story may be. And I think like looking at the cards handed at you and just finding a way to get excited about and to take something from it is like, makes you, undefeatable basically.
At first I really was overwhelmed, and I thought about maybe even dropping out of school, maybe taking a semester off and focusing 100% on the business. And then I think back, And I feel like I was just feeling bad for myself. My mom was pregnant with my little brother while she was going through grad school. She's a physician assistant. You've been through legal
Yeah.
school. I mean, that's how many years?
Yeah, that's like
The hours.
3.5 years on top of the 4 years of college already. So like 7 years, 8 years in school after. Yeah, fun, right?
Yeah, if you can't go to community college, then
Yeah, I know. I just don't feel bad. You were that way now, right?
yeah, there's no excuse. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's just something you have to buckle down. And I made a
Exactly.
decision to go to school. I served in the military so I could go to school. I'm gonna take advantage of that. I'm gonna get everything I can from school, and if school excels my business, then I'm gonna excel my business through school. And I think that's just the decision I made, and that's what I'm sticking to.
Awesome. I love that you're sticking to it too. You're like, there are going to be
Yeah.
times where this is tough, but I made this decision, so let's see it through and be positive. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Did we talk about
I say that because it's the beginning of the day and I haven't been to class yet. I'm gonna come home like this.
Yeah, you're sitting there like,
We
oh,
wake up like this, and then at the end of the day, you're like, maybe I'm going to drop out.
Yeah.
The whole thing
You know what?
repeats itself in the morning.
Let's re-record that part. I want to say that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, go ahead. We didn't really.
No, so
it ties into that.
Yeah, so like tying into that. So have you had any low points where you're just like, none of this is gonna work. The hell with it. Like a lot of people, sometimes they get like stuck in the mud and they're just like,
Like a bad
this
day.
idea. So yeah, it's like a day where you're just like, you know what? I quit this business. I quit school. I quit everything. I'm just done.
I've had, yeah,
He's like every day.
absolutely. It's down to, I have to write a paragraph about my business, and I can't even write a paragraph because my brain just isn't working. I've been doing 100 other things. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I can't think of the words. It doesn't go together right. I write it down. I get upset. I close my laptop.
Yeah.
I go do something else for an hour. I come back. I reset my mind. I revisit it. I go through the content. I can't do it again. Set it down again. Go take another break. And I just keep on doing that until I can come back and the words are there.
Yeah.
See, that's important too, because like what a lot of people do, like this, like the whole like kind of like hustle culture is very popular now. It's like, don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done. Like I don't believe in that, because I'm just like, you're not gonna produce anything of quality. Like just take a break, take it easy, and go do it. But, like a lot of people, like they just like, no, gotta burn myself out, gotta go for it, gotta keep hustling, gotta keep doing this, and it's not healthy. It's not. I know that's what's preached out there, and a lot of people believe that, and they just believe like, if I stop, I'm going to fail. And sometimes you're right. You just have to be like, this is not working. I need to just take a break or just get out of here for the weekend and just clear my mind. And I feel like that's so important for people to realize, because like everything on social media, everything you see out there, it's just like, keep going, don't stop. And like at some point, you just have to stop. Like you just have to take a break.
Listen to your body.
Yeah.
I think, so quality over quantity.
Exactly.
My whole business, I'm not going to do 2,000 scatterings a year. I have a number limit. I do that on purpose because I want to focus a certain amount of time on each scattering. I think everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
My services are premium. Everything I do is to the utmost quality. This is an extremely important time in someone's life. I need to give them that much respect. I think with that, and when you do get aggravated, if I feel good, I'm going to perform well. If I take the time I need, then my business will show, and you'll see that in the quality of my work. You'll see that in the effort I put into it. And I think you're right. I think when you do need a break, don't get me wrong. I've stayed up late. I've worked on it. I've hustled through it. But when you truly hit that wall, and you need something else in your life, you need that balance, you need personal time, you need friend time, you need whatever you need. You need to go sit on the couch and be quiet for an hour.
Well, exactly.
Do it, because when you come back, you're going to be fresh. You're going to be better. You're going to have it in your head. And that's just day-to-day processes. Real lows, my biggest real low, Scott Christie, my videographer, you guys know Scott. He came out.
For a long time.
I flew him out. This was before we had. So the video service on Perfect Farewells is a fairly new idea. I'd always wanted to do the cremation scatterings. I'd never thought about videoing it. And I called Scott when I was just starting the business, and I told him what I thought, and I needed a photographer. And then he was the one that actually was like, why don't we video it? And I was like, yeah, if we video it, we could make a personal documentary about that person. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. And we just kind of bounced each other off like that. And basically, the first failure I had was when I flew him out. We were going to create a couple commercials. I spent a lot of money, pretty much my entire business allotment that I had left, and flew him out to California. We went to Yosemite, and we were going to do essentially a commercial scattering, like a fake scattering. So it wasn't anyone's real ashes, but we had to do it like it was someone's real ashes. And the problem with that is that it's hard to put the same passion and personal effect on something that you knew isn't someone.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a backstory, and the backstory changed because when we got up to Yosemite, the weather was terrible. But since he's from New York and I flew him out here, we only had a week to shoot this. We couldn't wait out the weather. And essentially, we just had a big flop, is what happened.
Yeah.
I didn't have the correct script because to do a perfect farewell, I would wait. If it were a real person, I would have waited endless amount of days until the weather was good, if that's what they wanted. If they want it done on the rainiest day in the world because that day is special to them, I'll do it on that day.
Mm-hmm. So you felt that it was like less genuine, even though the intention was good. You felt like it was like,
It didn't feel real, and everything about this is about feeling real, is about being personal. And then that was my first time ever. I'm sure you have been videoed in front of the camera, but something to me, I can connect with people. I love talking to people. I'm an extrovert. I like connecting with people. Talking to a camera that doesn't make any emotions, that just stares right in your face, is hard.
I deal with that. I consistently struggle with that. It's like the worst.
And then saying something that isn't really genuine in front of the camera, and then trying to have that emotion of an actual scattering, it was hard.
Yeah.
And so we drove back from that trip. I'm looking at my bank account. I'm driving back after knowing I didn't get the content I needed, and just feeling like this is, it. And in times like that, I'm lucky because I grew up with my dad who had a business, and seeing, ups and downs of that business, seeing down so hard that, at times I thought, maybe we don't have a business anymore, and then seeing that and knowing that's part of business, and being, I called him actually, and he's like, that's an easy loss. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm not sued. I'm not, not in trouble. I just have to wait until I can save more money and try again. And that was probably the biggest reality check for me. But it also gave me a lot of knowledge into what I need to pre-plan for something like that. Because doing a scattering is easy because you know the person through the family and you have a connection and it's personal. Creating video content, commercials, and doing the marketing aspect of the business, to me, I thought was going to be very similar to the ash scattering, and it is not at all. So.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, because it's all about perspective, right? It's you could look at a failure or something and say, oh, we're not going to make it, or you could turn around, or you could take the lesson from it and say, okay, here's how I'm going to be better next time. And that's really what you did. There's always that. It's not human and it's not honest when people say positive mindset, nothing ever affects me. Like, we're human. Of course, in the moment, it's crushing. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're like, no, I spent this money. I had it already in my head. I effed up. What did I do? It's normal to beat ourselves up a little bit. And you do that when you care about something. So I think that's important. But I think when everything sets and you really look at it, you could take a positive from it and say, okay, well, here's at least clearly I could circle what I would have done differently, and I'm going to do that next time, and it's going to be 10 times better. So if you didn't have those low moments or those bad moments, we'd never learn anything or get better. We'd just always be the same. So, yeah.
As cliche as that sounds, that is 100% true.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people that are like, learn from your failures and blah, blah, blah. And you can say that when you're not failing, but when you're 100%. Failing, you do not want to say, I learned from this failure. I spent this much money on this lesson, but at the end of the day now, when I'm not on the drive home.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is just not to let that demotivate you. And I try not to feel bad for myself. I mean, that you're right. I did learn something. I still have my business. I'm still going up, and that's what matters,
Yeah.
And I learned from that. And you're right. The next product I make, the next commercial I make, I'm going to be more prepared. Hopefully it doesn't rain instead of snow.
Yeah, some things you can't control, and sometimes that's even more frustrating because you're like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this.
Yeah. I just have to make different precautions forever,
Yeah, but that's such a good point. That's why stuff like this motivates me so much because, like a picture of like nature that says like just do it, and failure makes you better. Like the Michael Jordan quote with like the waterfall in the background. Like that doesn't help when you're actually like when something just happened and somebody tags you in that or sends you that. You're like, great. It doesn't actually help. It's like it's one dimensional. It's like there's no substance to it. It doesn't capture what it really feels like when you're in that hard moment. That's why I love stuff like this and the real raw stories. It's like, hey, sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's really bad, but when it's really bad, it's eventually worth it. It's really important to talk about this stuff because if you don't, then people have unreal expectations of what success is like. They don't know how to handle it when they go through a hard time. I know myself, like even in my own journey, I was surrounded by people who were hyper positive and like, it's all about mindset and, in your worst moment, you just have to be positive. And I think it had a negative impact on me because I never saw them have a bad day. And people don't want to show their bad days and they don't want to show, they just want their social media highlight reel of success. And I think that's actually really detrimental to being able to handle when something does happen. I think it makes more people turn away or it makes them quit sooner because they're not used to seeing or hearing that. They're like, oh, I must be bad at this or this must be a bad sign. But honestly, it happens to all of us. And, rather than that motivational quote, I like to share these stories and even with my own brand, and that's why I connect with people like you and people like Scott. Even with my own brand, I was an executive at a marketing company, and I left because I hate marketing companies. I hated how we had creative differences, and I hated what I saw other marketing companies do around the world that we looked at as competition. I saw that people overpromised, underdelivered. It was all about money, and we were almost like let's make a parallel to the death industry, like taking family out of it, taking fun out of it, and making it dark and saturated and something that was far from us. It was the same with marketing. It was very much, here are the numbers, this is how much it's going to cost, over promising, under delivering, overcharging, but nobody was talking about the people and, why are you doing this and what's different about you? Everybody was like, we had looked at competition and people were making these ads that were so saturated. Like you said, getting in front of a camera and it didn't feel real. Like the stock photos and it's not even the person's team that you're dealing with. You're like, I know you're a small business and I know what you look like and you're posting this stock picture of this full office. Like it's not real. And we were making business and things more and more distant by trying to compete and use these sales tactics. And that's why I started Bold, because I said, well, it's about people and their stories. And sometimes stories are raw. The best marketing is like documenting what's actually happening. Like even with you, like documenting something real, like that is real power and real emotion. Like stories from these families and stuff, maybe like that's what makes you guys different. It's not about having like the best ad or the best whatever it might be. It's about being as genuine as possible in every stage, like, in every stage of your journey, in the low times and the high times. That's why I do what I do. Like when I see somebody who's real and it's pictures of them and videos of them, I'm more likely to interact with them because I could feel their passion. It doesn't feel real to me when it's like a stock photo or whatever it might be. It feels the same, as everything else. It doesn't stand out and it doesn't give me that personal connection, and I'm tired of it.
I think that's why I like your podcast so much. I love listening to you guys because it seems real. It seems transparent. It seems like, you're real people and everyone knows what real people feels like. We're in a world that's so saturated by editing photos and pre-planning this and exactly this because we have the ability now to go back on a video and that's why I love the podcast format so much. It's not, this isn't going to be an edited video, where my face looks perfect because I have makeup on and, I have a script I'm reading and a crowd claps when they're supposed to clap. This is thing is just be transparent. Everyone knows what it feels like to be human. We're all human. Everyone knows what it feels like. Everyone understands it. And I think if everyone understands it, it's something that we can talk about openly. It's something we can just be human. And even when it comes to business, if I mess up in my business, the worst thing I can do is cover that up. The best thing I can do is say, I messed up. I'll take accountability for my actions, and I'm sorry. And if you're genuine about that,
people appreciate that. People are like, oh, I messed up too. Thank you for being honest with me. And it's just about, and it's customer service too, right? But customer service is all about being human. It's saying, hey, this happened. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to help you. And people appreciate. What people don't like is radio silence, being lied to because they could feel it. Like, that's what people don't like. And I don't think many people understand that. But I like to think of it as like what I do and what you do. I'm mad John walked out because he makes fun of me all the time. He like just calls me a dork, but I really do see it as like going back to people and tribes, right? Like in the beginning, they were just humans and they were just tribes, and we took care of each other. And if it was back in the day and we were in a tribe, like I would be the creative person who helped people tell their story, and I would be the person who helped people get their business's message across, and I would help people write. I would be like a scribe, and you would be helping people with death care and making it positive, and you would be like, bringing light to these people in a dark time and giving them comfort. Like that's what it would be, and that's like how I see businesses now. I try to bring people back into it. It's like, look, we're all in this society together. We don't have to put each other down. There's room for everyone. How can we make ourselves better? And how can we get our stories across? And how can we work with each other and strengthen each other to do good work for good people? Like, I say that all the time, but at the end of the day, if you love what you do, you want to do good work. And if you don't love what you do, like, life is short. You should just probably find something else. I know it's scary, but if that like purpose and passion isn't there, it might be a sign that you shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's scary for people to hear. But I do think if you love what you do, it all kind of comes naturally to you.
I 100% agree. I think I love that you think of things tribally. Ever since I started building this log cabin, I live off grid the whole time I'm doing it. I wash my clothes in the creek.
That's the coolest thing about you, by the way. And you
so
say it as like an afterthought. Like, we've talked before this show, obviously, and you're like, no, this is my business, this is this, and like I'm building this log cabin. It's such like an under the radar thing you say, and I'm like, wait, hold on. You need to put more emphasis on the building the log cabin thing.
Yeah, but I do see things as after those experiences, after the summers living there, I do see things more primitive. That's the right word. But I think you're right. I think people understand what it's like to be human. I think we try to get away from it really far. And try to make things very Instagram perfect and whatnot. But
and
that's
in your
not
industry, and in your industry, like my industry, it's like Instagram perfect. Your industry, it's like making this perfect funeral and putting chemicals in this person, and the $10,000 casket, and this thing that's supposed to look like your home, but you have a home for free in your home, and keeping it distant, and the family's not involved, and you come a day later when everything's ready, and it's just distance. And same with me, marketing and Instagram. It's like, make this look fake, stock photo, really clickbaity copy, and it's distant. But like you said, like going back to your core and nature, people feel that. Like we're not dumb, basically. Like at the end of the day, anybody could feel BS from a mile away. They really can.
100%.
So the tribal thing is just an example of why I think it like goes back to our heart and our body. It's just something we naturally feel. But getting away from that, like I always say, the internet's full of noise. Instead of like focusing on adding to it, you should break through it. And breaking through it is being genuine and honest. Like when you see something real in the middle of like all these ads, it's like, oh wow, like a real person. They're bringing me value. They're not trying to like oversell to me. They're just trying to spread their story. It's the same with you, like going to your cabin. It's like getting out of the world for a minute and going away, like being distant from the saturation, if even for a little bit. If every entrepreneur can find time to get some distance from the day-to-day clutter of what sales look like, what marketing looks like, what the death industry looks like, it brings you back to your core and gives you that perspective. So I think it's so interesting that that's something you do. do you even realize it's something that's like helping you with your business and your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only just my business, but my personal life too. I mean, I do stray away from social medias, Facebooks, and whatnot. That has probably hurt me in a business sense because I'm not as savvy. But at the same time, um, I think it's healthier for me. I think it's better for my business. I think it keeps things more real. And does that hurt my business? I don't think so. I think that adds to it. I think that genuine feel and what I'm trying to do, and keeping myself mentally clear and healthy and grounded, is only going to help me. And if it doesn't help my business and it helps me, that's okay too, because I think the better I am, the better I can help other people, and if I'm stuck in a fake reality, then, I'm just going to display that in my own life, and that's not going to help anyone.
Yeah. It goes back to like the whole like put the airplane mask on yourself first. It's like if you're mentally and emotionally there in yourself, like you could be better for other people, you could better serve them. So
yeah, I don't want to be distracted ever by anything else, especially when I'm dealing with the important topic that I am, in business with.
You're in a super, super vulnerable, like you're literally dealing with people at their most vulnerable probably ever.
Yeah, and I see a lot of that. People talk to me about mortuaries and stuff. Not all mortuaries are bad. I think there's a lot of really good people out there that are in the mortuary business. I don't think the funeral business is all that bad. I think a lot of it's just what people have been told and what they're trained to, and it becomes the norm. But when someone calls me, I don't say, I understand how it feels. I don't say, I'm not going to sit there and cry and feel like I know what it feels like, because I don't.
Yeah.
Even if I lost someone of comparable relation, person's like, I don't act like I do. I don't try to act like I do. What I'm here for is I have a service that can help you. If you think this is perfectly going to help you, if you think that this is what you need, then that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help, and I'm not here to say I understand. I don't, because I don't.
You're like listening more than you're telling. You're like trying to gather what they need, and then you're figuring out how you could serve them, rather than saying, I think you need this.
And I hear a lot of customers say that they came from mortuaries where they felt like that's what mortuary did, or that they felt like that's what that industry did, is say, oh, I understand how you feel. This product will make you feel better. And that's not what I want to do, because I don't understand how they feel. And I just want to give them, and another thing we do is everything's totally customizable. This is my customers design the perfect farewell. They design their perfect farewell. I just perform it.
That's awesome.
And a big reason behind that is a lot of people can't physically do a 3-day hike. Maybe they don't have the family. Maybe they can't travel. Maybe they can't, maybe they don't want to deal with the legal paperwork. And that's something that I really want to bring to the table, is that I handle all the paperwork needed for shipping. I handle all the permissions for national parks, for videography, for anything logistical. Perfect Roles takes care of, so then they don't have to worry about it. Because the last thing I think I would want to do after I lost someone is file a bunch of paperwork about that person that I lost.
Oh, yeah.
So I try to do basically an all-around service. And then even now I'm branching out, like the art. It's new to me. I'm not an artist. And so hiring artists and getting involved in that community, you have to be genuine to be an artist.
Absolutely.
You can't fake passion and create a beautiful piece of art. So I'm working now with people around me who are absolutely passionate. I just hired or partnered up with a man named Jeremy. Jeremy Cecile Kira. He is an artist in San Diego. Let me say this right, because I always mess up the word. It's synesthesia. He sees color as emotion, or he sees emotion as color. And Jeremy has autism, but he is an absolutely successful artist. His work is beautiful. And being around him, I think on a very, very basic level, seeing the passion that he has for what he does, and basically what he does is he can meet someone, and when he talks to them and feels their emotion and essentially sees who they truly are, he sees that as colors, and he has these dreams, and then he paints his dreams, and when he paints these dreams, he just layers these colors, and you watch him paint, and you're like, I don't know if that makes sense, and then when he's finally done, it's a masterpiece every time, and you look at it and you're like, that's incredible.
That's amazing.
Back again.
So what we're doing is we're mixing, cremation ashes into this paint. He's getting to know the person through their family, and by watching videos and seeing pictures, and maybe even going through that person's Instagram or Facebook, and just kind of getting a general gist of them. And then when he sees enough of them, he tells us, and we mix the paint. He just paints away and creates, absolutely, but just being around these genuine people, surrounding yourself with that kind of passion and that kind of drive and that kind of love. I think people can see that.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I want to do is everyone I work with, I want to be passionate, even when it comes down to Scott and videoing and every person in the business that I work with. I don't want to have to ever beg for anyone to work. I want everyone to be passionate and love what they do, and that'll reflect in the work that I provide for people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And people can see the genuine aspect of that, and I think that's what makes them feel good.
Yeah, and it goes back kind of like what you said before there too, like where you said sometimes people will call you and maybe they have this predetermination of like a mortuary or a mortician they dealt with that gave them a bad vibe, and now they have this bad vibe about the industry. It's like kind of like how I have to combat marketing companies who aren't in it for the right reason, and he has to combat like bad law firms that are in it for the wrong reason. Like there are great funeral home and funeral directors who are in it for the right reason because they had an experience and they want to change the game and they want to offer everything they could offer. And then there are people who are just in it for money and they take advantage of people in their vulnerable time. So it's just like any industry has like people in it for the right reasons, passionate people in it for the wrong reasons. And it's like you said, people feel the difference just by having a conversation. So I think just being your most passionate and genuine self, that shines through, and that's what helps you grow. That's what helps us grow. I think, when you're good, the good just comes back to you, and other people could kind of feel that you genuinely want to help them.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier, is when you're in a dark time, like what pushes you through, like what keeps you going, and surrounding yourself with that passion and having it for yourself and actually feeling it. Because if it sucks and you love it, then
That's good, right?
you're good. I mean, and that goes for anything, whether you have a job, whether you're building a log cabin, and it's the hardest thing you've ever done in your whole life, but since you love it, it's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that reflects in business 100%. And
yeah, I just was interviewed by this awesome woman. She was interviewing me, and she asked how do you stay motivated? How do you do what you do? And how do you manage your time? And I was literally look, the most honest answer I could give you, I'm not great at sitting down and technically managing my time. I just love what I do. And I think when you love what you do, you just do, you can't ignore it. You kind of just become engulfed in it, and you kind of just give it your all, and you want to make sure it's good, and you're always thinking about it, and you're always evolving. When you care about something, it's not something you could just turn off. So if you could find a way to turn what you're passionate about and what you care about into your work, you're going to be successful, because it's like this natural, you wake up and you're like, okay, how do I absolutely crush this today? And you're, like you said, writing ideas in your notebook, or turning in assignments about your business. It's not something you're faking. It just comes to you naturally and generally, and you're just naturally pushing it. So if it's something you could turn into your actual career in life, then you've won. That's awesome. So what is next for you? You're going to school. This is what you foresee. It's already your business, but you started school a bit late from being in the Navy, so you're still early. What do you see the next few years looking like as far as taking it full time, and what does that look like to you?
So I think another untraditional path. I think I'm going to do a year on school and a year off school. And that's going to allow me to focus on my business in between, to accomplish some other crazy goals I have, like finishing this cabin this summer. And it'll allow me also, a lot of the scatterings require me to travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that basically is impossible to go full-time brick and mortar school on campus and then travel every weekend to do a scattering. So I want to do a year on, a year off. Maybe when I come back, if I'm busy with the business, I'll take online classes. School's honestly kind of on, I wanted to say my back burner, but it is something that I'm doing for myself in the time that I've allotted for it. As far as the business goes, that's where 100% of my energy is going.
Yeah.
And the art is really where I'm pushing right now. I'm working on basically getting partners and employees set up under me to where they're passionate about what they do, and we can create these art pieces. I would love to have in the future, every artist from painters to, any kind of non-traditional art pieces to molders to sculptors to and just have the resources available to where when someone calls and if they're interested in having their ashes or their loved one's ashes mixed into a work of art, that I can say with 100% confidence, we have you, we will take care of that.
So do you
Jeremy's
foresee-
a step in that, and so is the other artist that I'm hiring. I'm getting some photorealism artists really soon, so we can do pictures of people, pictures of pets, and I think the pet cremation is also a huge.
Oh yeah.
Something people don't think about maybe when they hear about Perfect Farewells, but a lot of our customers, it's their pets we're scattering, or it's their pets that we're mixing into paint. And so I really want to broaden out the scope, but the main goal of Perfect Farewells in the future is to just continue changing this something more positive and making people feel good about the situation and the life and celebrating the life that we're honoring.
Awesome. So we're coming up on time a little bit here. Where can people find you, follow your journey, website, social media? Like, how can people reach you and learn more?
Okay. So www.theperfectfarewell.com.
Awesome.
That's my website. Hop on there. You can email me from there. Also, check out Jeremy. He has his own website. It's called www.jeremysvision.com.
Cool.
That's where he sells just his regular art. Super interesting stuff. Hop on, check it out. If you want ash mixed art with Jeremy, go through Perfect Farewells. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think what you're doing in the world is incredible. You're bringing color to a darker industry, and I think you've won for so many reasons. You're helping people in their most vulnerable time. You're honoring the person who has passed and giving them what they wanted. You get to travel the world and skydive and do crazy things while doing it and grow and learn as a person yourself. So I think really what you're doing is phenomenal, both for your clients and for you, and I'm really, really happy, and we support you all the way and look forward to catching up with you soon and seeing how growth is going and everything like that.
Thank you so much for having me on today. This is my first podcast. This whole experience has been, I was nervous. I woke up this morning, I woke up an hour before I should have, and I was so excited. I was running around the house, making breakfast and having my coffee. And so thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this, and it's been an awesome experience and a pleasure.
Us too. I'm sure you're going to be on a ton more soon. So keep us updated. Send us the links. We want